The first thing you need to know is that the bus stop was never supposed to be there. It wasn't on any of the city maps, not on the transit app, not on the printed folding schedules crumpled in the bottom of old ladies' purses. Officially, there was nothing at the corner of Ashwood and Briar Lane, but an old warehouse and a stretch of cracked pavement. And yet, every night, right around 11:40, the bus shelter flickered into existence. Not in a flash of light, not in a plume of smoke. It was subtler than that. One moment, the sidewalk would be bare, just a leaning street light, a sagging chain-link fence, and the distant hum of traffic. The next moment, if you looked back, there it was, a glass-sided shelter with a warped metal bench and a smeared advertisement panel, as if it had always been there, just outside your peripheral vision. I didn't discover it by accident. I had been watching that corner for weeks. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is that I work nights. I've always felt more awake after dark, always felt a little more myself when the rest of the city finally shuts up. I'm the guy you don't notice, the janitor with keys to places you've forgotten exist, the one mopping fluorescent hallways while you sleep, the one emptying trash from your office trash can while your family photos stare down at me. I get off work at 11:15 most nights. The bus I'm supposed to take home stops 6 blocks away at a brightly lit, well-documented, completely normal corner. There are cameras there, a coffee shop, the warm glow of late-night traffic. I haven't gone to that stop in 2 months. Instead, I walk the wrong direction, past shuttered storefronts and dark apartment windows, toward Ashwood and Briar, where the streetlights grow thinner, and the air grows heavier, and the sound of the city feels strangely muffled, as if the buildings themselves are holding their breath. Every night I tell myself I won't go back. Every night I end up standing at that corner again, staring at the empty sidewalk, waiting for a bus stop that isn't supposed to exist. I wish I could tell you this was curiosity. It isn't. It feels more like compulsion, like a hook in my mind, tugging. It's raining the night the story begins. Not a storm, not a cinematic downpour, just that steady, needling drizzle that soaks you without ever feeling dramatic enough to warrant an umbrella. The pavement gleams in sickly orange bands under the streetlights, and every car that passes leaves a wavering smear of reflected headlights in the water. I stand at the corner, hands in my pockets, collar up, watching the empty stretch of sidewalk across the street. There's nothing there. I know there's nothing there. I checked earlier, from the opposite corner just to be sure. Just cracked concrete and an overfilled trash can leaning like it's drunk. Then a car passes, its headlights flaring across my eyes, forcing me to squint. For less than a second, I blink. And when my vision clears, the shelter is there. Glass sides, metal frame, a roof stained by years of rain, that smeared advertisement panel showing some half-torn poster for a movie that never came out. The trash can is now tucked neatly beside the shelter, as if the city put it there on purpose. The shelter is empty. It is always empty when it arrives. My heart does that now familiar, sick little lurch. Because empty doesn't mean safe. Empty means it's waiting. I cross the street without looking for cars, my world narrowed to that rectangle of glass and metal. The rain patters on the shelter's roof, trickling down the panels, dragging little rivers of grime in crooked tracks. You'd think something that just appeared out of nowhere would look new. It doesn't. The bus stop looks old. Lived in, abused. The glass is scratched with names carved by keys and knives. Stickers half peeled away cling stubbornly to the metal poles. Gum is mashed hard as stone under the edge of the bench. Most people never see it. That's the first rule I've figured out. Only certain people ever notice this stop. People who work late, people whose families no longer wait up for them, people who walk home instead of taking cabs, counting their tips or their hours or their regrets. People who are already a little worn down at the edges. Inside the shelter, screwed into the back panel, there's a bus schedule. I've taken a picture of it on my phone before, but every time I look, the photo is corrupted, blacked out, pixelated, smeared by glitching lines. So now I just read it when I'm there. 12 o'clock midnight, 2 o'clock, 3:03. Those are the only times listed. No route number, no destination, just a single line, printed in small faded letters, last service. Below that, smaller still, more of a whisper than text. All journeys final. The first time I saw that, I thought it was a prank. The second time, I didn't. Tonight, as the drizzle becomes a light mist, I see something new. The schedule has changed. There's another line added at the bottom, the letters still wet with ink, like they've been written just moments ago. A time, 11:59, and next to it, a single word, reserved. I know I should leave. I feel it like a pressure across my chest, a solid, sensible voice inside me saying, go home, take the normal bus, forget you ever saw this place. But that voice is quieter than something else, something that feels like interest from the outside. As if, standing under this shelter, I am no longer just a man in the rain, but a specimen under glass. I look up at the streetlight beside the shelter. The bulb vibrates with that faint, electric hum, and the moths that should be circling it are gone. In fact, I realize there are no insects here at all. No bugs, no stray cats, no rats scurrying along the curb, no life except me and the dripping rain. I glance back at the schedule. The word reserved seems darker now, the ink soaking deeper into the paper. Reserved for who? I mutter. I'm not expecting an answer. I get one anyway. A droplet of water falls from the shelter's roof and splashes onto the bench beside me, clear and clean in the grimy light. It spreads in a thin, trembling puddle. Letters form in that water, not in ink, not in any substance at all, just a suggestion of shape on the bench's slick surface. 4 letters. Y-O-U. The puddle quivers. Then the letters lose their shape, dissolving back into a formless wet patch. I don't move. My mind scrambles for explanations, reflection, trick of the light, pattern seeking. I should laugh it off. I should walk away. But I don't. Because this isn't the first time the bus stop has responded. There's something I need to admit before we go any further. I haven't been entirely honest with you. This isn't the first night I've waited here. It isn't the 3rd or the 10th. I have been coming here every night I can, for weeks. Sometimes just standing, sometimes sitting, sometimes pressing my palm flat to the cold glass, listening, really listening, to the silence. And I have seen things. A man in a suit, his tie soaked, staring at the schedule with the same hollow confusion. A teenage girl in a work uniform, mascara running down from her tired eyes. An older woman clutching 2 plastic grocery bags so tightly her knuckles went white. They all had one thing in common. They never looked at me. Even when I stepped close, even when I cleared my throat or spoke, my words floated into the damp night air like smoke. No eye contact, no acknowledgement. It was as if I wasn't there at all. And each time, at 12 o'clock exactly, A bus would arrive that I could hear but not see clearly. A blur of light and shadow, the suggestion of bulk, the sigh of doors opening, and they would step on. One by one. Each time, the bus would pull away with a growl of its engine and vanish into the darkness of a city that never had that route. And when it was gone, the stop would feel thinner, as if it had fed. I told myself I was only watching, that I wasn't part of it, that I was an observer, not a participant. But tonight, the schedule has been updated, and I can no longer pretend I'm just a witness. My phone says 11:58. The second hand ticks too slowly, like it's moving through syrup. The street around me is quiet. No cars pass. No music thumps from distant windows. It's as if the city has bowed out of this moment, leaving me alone with the structure hunched over the sidewalk and whatever is behind it. I hear something faint at first. Not the rumble of an engine, not yet. It's breathing, slow, measured breaths, as though something very large is asleep just a little distance away. And each exhale is dragging over rusted metal and stone. The sound doesn't come from the street, or from behind me, or from above. It comes from the glass itself. I press my fingertips against the panel and feel it, a subtle, rhythmic shudder. The bus stop is breathing. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? I thought so too, until I saw the condensation. On the inside of the glass, where no rain touches, fog blooms in and out with each invisible breath, expanding and contracting like lungs. For a moment the fog thickens, and something presses close from the other side. Not a face. Faces have features. This is an impression. A bulge in the mist, vaguely head-shaped, the suggestion of weight leaning against an unseen barrier. It's not human. It is too tall, too wrong in proportion. The upper part is elongated, as if the skull stretches far back into the darkness, tapering to a point you can't quite see. Where eyes should be, there are deeper shadows that feel like holes in the world. And it is close enough that, if the glass vanished, we would be inches apart. I stop breathing. The fog shape holds for a heartbeat. 2, 3. Then in one long, delighted exhale, it sighs over the surface and more words appear in the condensation, traced by an invisible finger from the inside. You came back. This time, I can't pretend it's a trick of the light. This time, I know. It remembers me. Far down the street, something moves. At first, it's just a glow, a smudge of light rounding a distant corner. My gut clenches. I've seen that light before, on other nights, as the man in the suit, the girl in the uniform, the woman with the bags stepped onto something I could only half see. But tonight, the light is different. It's redder, deeper, less like headlights and more like the glow behind closed eyelids when you stare at the sun too long. The breathing in the glass quickens. The condensation words smear and drip, but not before another line gets scrawled beneath the first, the letters jagged and eager. I saved you a seat. There is pleasure in those words. Not warmth, not kindness, but a delighted, quivering anticipation. The light grows. I can hear the bus now, or what passes for one. The chugging engine is wrong, too irregular, too organic, like a heart straining to push thick blood through clogged arteries. There's a scraping, too, as if metal is dragging along the asphalt, resisting forward movement. Every sound is layered, as if there is more than one thing moving in perfect unison, stacked on top of itself. I should run. Every instinct in my body screams it. Move, get away, put distance between yourself and this thing. but my feet stay rooted to the slick pavement. It's not paralysis. It's not fear alone. It's fascination. And behind that, coiling through my mind like smoke, something else. A soft hiss that sounds almost like a voice, curling up my spine, stroking the edges of my thoughts. See it. It whispers. You wanted to see it. You've always wanted to see what waits for them. The bus glides into view. At a glance, it looks like any old city bus, if you've ever seen one through the bottom of a dirty glass of water. Its edges waver. The paint color shifts with every passing second. Blue, then gray, then a shade of black, so deep, it seems to devour the streetlights around it. The destination sign above the windshield flickers through nonsense, strings of numbers, symbols, a language I don't recognize. In the dim spill of its interior lights, the windows are bare. No driver, no passengers. But the longer I stare, the more wrong it becomes. The wheels aren't turning right. They don't spin. They flex, bulging against the road like something muscular trying to mimic a circle. The doors don't quite line up, seams pulsing as if stitched onto the side of a living thing that isn't used to being opened. And underneath the normal mechanical noises, there is another sound, a low, resonant vibrato, like a laugh stretched out so long and so low that it becomes nothing but a dark hum. The bus pulls up to the curb. Its brakes hiss, not with air, but with a wet, drawn-out sound that makes my stomach twist, like steam passing through something organic. The doors fold inward with a shudder, and the smell hits me. Not diesel, not city grime, something far older. The dry rot of old churches, the faint scorched scent of candles snuffed by fingers, the iron tang of blood that has had time to sink into wood. My throat closes involuntarily. Inside, the bus is darker than it should be, shadows clinging hard in the aisle and pooling under the seats. The overhead lights flicker once, twice, and with each flash, I see it differently. Rows of standard blue plastic seats, then rows of something that might be ribs, then both at once, overlapped, reality and something much worse sharing the same space. I don't see a driver, but I feel its attention. It's like stepping into a spotlight you can't see. A weight of awareness settling over me, pressing down, peeling back layers. It is examining me, the way a child examines an insect pinned under glass. The breath in the shelter glass gusts, thick and ecstatic. Inside you go. The words smear across the condensation, and the glass rattles with the force of unseen laughter. "Not tonight," I whisper. My voice sounds small, ridiculous even. The humming deepens. The bus's interior lights dim further, the darkness inside seeming to lean toward me like a curious animal. The open door is a mouth in more ways than one. From the black of the aisle, something stirs. Not a hand, not a tentacle, nothing that simple. Instead, the shadows themselves drift, like smoke caught in a draft. They spill down the steps in a thin sheet, stopping inches from my shoes. Where they touch the pavement, the wet asphalt wrinkles as if reacting to a touch, recoiling. An impression of something formed in those shadows, hooks of suggestion, hints of bone and claw, things that are not literal but feel very, very real in my mind. I hear whispers with no source, overlapping, echoing in my skull. We waited. We saved your seat. We wanted you first. Behind those layered whispers, there is another presence, singular, focused, unmistakably amused. This is the vessel, but it is not the predator. The predator is wearing it. I understand that with a clarity that makes my teeth ache. The bus is just a skin, a clever disguise, stretched over something far older, something that understands human fear intimately and takes its time savoring it. The darkness on the steps pulses. Step on, it suggests, not in words but in the shape of its silence. See what you've been watching from the outside. Feel it from the inside. The glass beside me fogs over in one sudden wave, as if something enormous on the other side has pressed its entire weight against it. Let me in. The letters are huge now, gouged into the condensation from the inside so forcefully that I hear the faint squeal of fingers dragging against glass. It doesn't want me to board. It wants closer. It wants through. Up to this point, you might still think I'm innocent, a victim, a passerby, someone who stumbled into something he didn't understand. I want you to hold on to that illusion for a moment longer, because standing there, rain dripping from my hair, heart pounding, staring into that impossible bus, and feeling the attention of the thing wearing it wrapping around my thoughts like cold, wet cloth, I am given a choice. Step forward or step back, into the bus or away from it. You're expecting me to say I ran, that I turned and fled into the comforting anonymity of the city, never to return to that cursed corner. But that's not what happened, because I have been coming here for weeks, because I have stood by and watched others vanish into that humming darkness while I stayed on the sidewalk and pretended I was an observer, not a participant. Because each time, a small, sour seed of envy germinated at the back of my mind, no matter how much I hated myself for it. I wanted to know. I wanted to see what they saw. I wanted to meet the thing that had been watching me watch it. So when the shadows reach toward my shoes, when the glass shakes with the demand, let me in. When the bus's not quite headlights cast long, wrong shadows that curve in directions they shouldn't, I step forward, just one step, onto the first slick metal stair. The shadows rush up my ankle like freezing smoke. The sensation isn't just cold, it's invasive. It pours into my skin, down through muscle and tendon, into bone, searching, probing, making space for itself. The whispers in my head become screams of laughter, shrill and delighted. Yes, yes, this one knows, this one wants. I gasp, clutching the rail, and for a heartbeat, my vision doubles. I see the bus interior as it really is, not seats. Ribs, not overhead lights. Eyes. The first time anyone ever told me about the bus stop at Ashwood and Briar, it wasn't a warning. It was a confession. Her name was Marissa Hale, 34, night shift nurse. The kind of person who looked tired even when she smiled, like life had been quietly draining her through a pinhole no one else could see. I didn't know her well, just enough to nod when we passed in the lobby of my building. But the night she knocked on my door, soaked to the bone and shaking, she didn't look like someone seeking help. She looked like someone trying to outrun something that had already caught her. The first time anyone ever told me about the bus stop at Ashwood and Briar, it wasn't a warning. It was a confession. Only one time was listed, 12 a.m., last service. But beneath it, in smaller letters, she had to lean close to read. All journeys final. She laughed nervously when she told me that part. Said it sounded like a joke. Said she thought maybe the city was doing some kind of art installation. But then she saw the second line, a time that hadn't been there a moment earlier. 11:59分, reserved. She swore the ink was still wet. She stepped back, heart thudding, and her umbrella slipped from her hand, clattering to the ground. When she bent to pick it up, she saw something reflected in the wet pavement. Not her. Not exactly. A shape behind her, tall, leaning, watching. She spun around. Nothing was there, but the shelter glass had fogged again, and this time words were forming on it, written from the inside by a finger she couldn't see. "Hello, Marissa." She didn't scream. She told me she couldn't. Her throat locked up, her breath froze, her body refused to obey. She backed out of the shelter, rain soaking her hair, her clothes, her shoes. And that's when she heard it, a low, dragging rumble. Not like an engine, more like something heavy being pulled across stone. The streetlights flickered. A glow appeared at the far end of the road, not white, not yellow, red, deep, pulsing red, like light shining through flesh. The bus rounded the corner. She said it looked normal at first, just a city bus, old and dented, headlights cutting through the rain. But the closer it came, the more wrong it became. The wheels didn't spin, they strained, bulging and flexing like tendons under skin. The windows weren't transparent. They were veins, thin and branching, pulsing faintly. And the destination sign above the windshield flickered through symbols she didn't recognize, shapes that made her eyes water just trying to read them. The bus hissed to a stop in front of her. The doors opened, and the smell hit her, burnt incense, old stone, blood. She staggered back, slipping on the wet pavement. Her red umbrella rolled into the gutter, spinning slowly. Inside the bus, the lights flickered, and in one of those flickers, she saw it. Not a driver, not a person. A silhouette hunched over the wheel, its limbs too long, its head too narrow, its spine arching like a hooked blade. Its fingers drummed on the steering column, long, jointed fingers that bent in too many places. It turned toward her. She didn't see eyes. She saw holes, deep, empty sockets that seemed to pull the light inward. And when it smiled, because she swore it smiled, she felt something inside her chest twist, like invisible hands were reaching through her ribs, testing the spaces between her bones. The bus whispered, not aloud, inside her skull. "Come on, Marissa, you've waited long enough." She stumbled backward, slipping in the rain, scrambling to her feet. She ran. She didn't look back. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment building, pounding on my door with shaking fists. She told me everything, every detail, every sound, every breath. And when she finished, she whispered. It knew my name. I asked her one question, a simple one. "Did you see anyone else at the stop?" She hesitated. Her eyes darted to the floor. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. "There was a man," she whispered, "standing inside the shelter. I didn't see his face. He didn't look at me. He just stood there, like he was waiting." My pulse hammered. "What did he look like?" She swallowed. "He looked like you." Marissa didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. By morning, she was gone. Her apartment door left open, her red umbrella lying in the hallway, dripping onto the carpet. No one saw her leave. No cameras caught her. No buses were recorded on that street. But I know where she went. I know who took her. And I know why the entity showed her me. Because the bus isn't just hunting victims. It's hunting connections. It's hunting stories. It's hunting me. And now, it's hunting anyone who listens. He told me his name was Daniel. I only met him once. In the lobby of my building around 2 in the morning. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes red, hands shaking, shirt buttoned wrong. He kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to be standing there. Or something. He asked if he could talk to me. Not because he knew me, but because he said I looked like someone who'd understand. I didn't correct him. Daniel worked late at a printing warehouse on the edge of town. Long shifts, bad lighting, machines that rattled like they were coughing up their last breaths. He usually drove home, but his car had died that week, so he walked. He told me the first night he heard it, he thought it was a prank. He was passing the corner of Ashwood and Briar, the same cursed intersection, when he heard someone whisper his name. Not shouted, not called, whispered, "Daniel." He spun around. No one was there, just the empty sidewalk, the leaning streetlight, and the faint smell of wet concrete. He kept walking, but the whisper followed him. "Daniel, Daniel." Soft, patient, almost playful. He said it felt like someone was walking right behind him, leaning close enough that he should have felt breath on his neck. But he didn't. There was no warmth, only cold. A cold that sank into his spine like a needle. The next night he heard it again. This time, the whisper didn't follow him. It led him straight to the bus stop. He swore it wasn't there when he left work. But when he reached the corner, the shelter flickered into existence. Glass walls fogged from the inside, bench slick with rain, schedule panel glowing faintly. He didn't want to go inside, but the whisper was already waiting. "Daniel, come here." He stepped under the shelter. The air changed instantly, thick, heavy, like the atmosphere in a room where someone had just died. The schedule had only one time listed, 12 a.m., last service, but beneath it, written in a shaky, uneven scrawl, Shir Dian, Daniel. He backed away. The glass fogged. A handprint appeared. Not a normal one. Too long, too thin. Fingers tapering into points. The handprint slid downward, leaving streaks in the condensation. Then it wrote, "I know you." Daniel told me he felt something inside him break at that moment. A small, fragile piece of sanity snapping like a twig. He turned to run. He didn't make it far. The streetlights dimmed, the air vibrated, and from the far end of the road a glow appeared, red, pulsing, alive. The bus. He said it didn't drive toward him. It glided, like it wasn't touching the ground at all. The wheels flexed, the windows pulsed. The destination sign flickered through symbols that made his vision blur. The bus stopped. The doors opened. And the whisper became a voice, not in his ears, inside his skull. "Daniel, I've been waiting for you." He staggered backward, shaking his head, hands over his ears, even though that did nothing to block the sound. The bus's interior lights flickered, and in one of those flickers, he saw the truth. The seats weren't seats. They were bodies, strapped upright, twisted. Mouths open in silent screams, eyes rolled white, skin stretched thin over bone. Some of them were still moving, barely. He fell to his knees. He begged. He cried. He prayed. And the entity laughed. Not loud, not cruel, soft, delighted. Like a child unwrapping a gift. A shadow spilled from the bus. Thin, slick, alive. It crawled across the pavement like spilled oil, reaching for him. He scrambled backward, but the shadow moved faster. It wrapped around his wrist. He screamed. He said it felt like ice and fire at the same time. Like something was burrowing under his skin, threading itself through his veins, tasting him from the inside. The voice whispered, "You're perfect. You're afraid. You're mine." He clawed at his arm, nails tearing skin, trying to rip the shadow off. It didn't budge. It only tightened. He didn't know how he got away. One moment, the shadow was dragging him toward the bus. The next, a car turned the corner, headlights sweeping across the street. The bus vanished, not drove away, vanished. The shadow snapped back like a recoiling rope, disappearing into the darkness. Daniel collapsed on the pavement, sobbing. He ran all the way home. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He didn't go to work. He just sat in his apartment, lights on, staring at his wrist. Because the shadow had left something behind. A mark. A dark branching stain under the skin, like veins filled with ink. He showed it to me. It pulsed. When he finished telling me his story, he asked me something simple, something that made my stomach twist. Has it ever called your name? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He saw the truth in my eyes. He nodded slowly. I thought so, he whispered. It knows you. It wants you. I think it's using us to get to you. He looked down at his wrist. The stain pulsed again. He flinched. It's not done with me, he said. I can feel it. It's waiting for the right moment. He stood. He walked to the door. He paused, and he said the last words I ever heard from him. If it calls you again, don't answer. He left. He never came back. The next morning, the news said someone had jumped in front of a train. They didn't release the name, but I knew. Because that night when I passed the bus stop, the schedule had a new line. 12 o'clock, collected, and beneath it, written in a thin, trembling scrawl, thank you. The next story didn't come from a neighbor. It came from a police report, a thin folder left on the front desk of my building. No name, no note, just a single sheet clipped inside. I shouldn't have opened it. I shouldn't have read it. But the moment I saw the location printed at the top, Ashwood and Briar, I knew it was meant for me. The report described a boy named Evan, 17, quiet, kept to himself, walked home from his part-time job every night across the old Briar Creek Bridge. The night he disappeared, he wasn't alone. Evan told his mother he heard a bus engine under the bridge, not above it, not on the road, under it. A low, throbbing rumble rising from the darkness below, vibrating through the concrete like something enormous was breathing against the underside of the world. He leaned over the railing. The creek was shallow, barely a foot of water trickling over rocks. But that night, the water was black, not dark, black like ink, like oil, like something thick enough to swallow light. And in that blackness, he saw a reflection, not his own. A bus, upside down, submerged, headlights glowing red through the water like eyes staring up at him. He blinked. The reflection blinked back. He stepped away from the railing, heart pounding. The air under the bridge felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. Like the world was holding its breath. Then he heard it. A voice rising from the water. Not a whisper. A murmur. A chorus of voices layered together, speaking in perfect unison. Evan, come down. We saved you a seat. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. He told himself it was a hallucination, stress, exhaustion, anything but real. But the voices continued, soft and coaxing. You're lonely. You're tired. We can take you somewhere better. He ran, but the sound followed him. Not through the air, but through the concrete, vibrating up through the soles of his shoes, chasing him across the bridge like a heartbeat. That wasn't his. He didn't mean to go to Ashwood and Briar. His legs carried him there on instinct, the same way mine had so many nights before. When he reached the corner, the shelter was already waiting. Glass fogged, bench dripping, schedule glowing faintly. He stepped inside, gasping for breath. The moment he did, the voices stopped. Silence. Not peace, the kind of silence that feels like someone is standing right behind you, smiling. He turned. The glass fogged. A single word appeared. "Hello." He backed into the bench, shaking. The schedule flickered. New text appeared. Sheer Din, Evan, and beneath it, all journeys final. He tried to leave. He couldn't. His feet wouldn't cross the threshold. The air outside the shelter had thickened. Not visibly, but physically, like a wall of pressure holding him in place. He was trapped. The streetlights dimmed. The temperature dropped. And from the far end of the road, a glow appeared, red, pulsing, alive. The bus. It didn't drive. It slid, like a shadow cast by something enormous moving behind the world. The wheels flexed. The windows pulsed. The destination sign flickered through symbols that made his nose bleed. The bus stopped. The doors opened. And the voices returned. Not from the bus, from the water under the bridge. "Come home, Evan. We've been waiting. We've been hungry." He screamed. He tried to run. He couldn't. The shadows reached him first. A tendril of darkness spilled from the bus. Thin, slick, alive. It wrapped around his ankle, then his wrist, then his throat, lifting him off the ground like a puppet on invisible strings. He clawed at the air, kicking, choking, tears streaming down his face. The entity whispered inside his skull, "Fear tastes better when it's fresh." The shadows dragged him up the steps. He vanished into the dark aisle. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. And the only thing left behind was a single wet footprint on the shelter floor. The police never found him. They searched the creek. They searched the woods. They searched the bridge. Nothing. But I know where he went. Because the next night, when I passed the bus stop, the schedule had changed again. 12 o'clock. Collected. And beneath it, in a shaky, uneven scrawl, he screamed your name. I stood there for a long time, staring at those words, feeling the cold settle into my bones. The entity wasn't just hunting, it wasn't just feeding, it was sending messages to me, and now, to you. Because if you're still listening, if you're still following this story, if you're still picturing the bus in your mind, it knows your name, too. I didn't plan to go back to the bus stop that night. I told myself I was done, that I'd heard enough stories, that I'd seen enough disappearances, that I'd felt enough cold fingers brushing the edges of my thoughts. But the truth is simpler. I went back because I couldn't stop myself. Because something in me, something I don't want to name, wanted to see if the entity had left me another message. And it had. When I reached Ashwood and Briar, the bus stop was already there, not flickering into existence, not appearing in a blink, just waiting, like it knew I was coming. The glass was fogged from the inside. The bench was slick with condensation. The schedule panel glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. I stepped inside. The air felt wrong immediately, thick, heavy, humming with a low vibration that crawled up my spine. The schedule had changed again. Shirdianjung, collected. Shirdianjung, collected. Shirdianjung, collected. 3 lines, 3 victims, Marissa, Daniel, Evan. But beneath them, a 4th line had been added. Shirdian, soon. My stomach tightened. I knew who that one was for. The shelter glass fogged violently, as if something enormous pressed its face against the other side. A shape formed in the condensation. Not a face. A suggestion of one. Long. Narrow. Wrong. The fog bulged outward, stretching like skin pulled tight over bone. Then a word appeared, carved by an invisible finger. "You're late." I swallowed hard. I wasn't planning to come back. The glass vibrated. Another word formed, Liar. I stepped back, pulse hammering. The fog shifted again, and a new sentence appeared, jagged, uneven, as if written by something trembling with excitement. "We heard you. We hear everything." The letters dripped, streaking downward like tears. Then I heard it. Not from the glass, not from the street, from inside my skull. The same voice that had whispered to Marissa, the same voice that had called Daniel, the same voice that had lured Evan to the bridge. But this time, it wasn't coaxing. It was amused. You keep telling them you're just watching, but you're not. You've never been. My breath caught. The voice deepened, layering over itself, becoming a chorus of tones that vibrated through my bones. You brought them to me. Every one of them. You opened the door. You called their names. I shook my head. No, I didn't. I never. The glass cracked. A thin fracture raced across the panel like a lightning bolt. Words appeared in the broken fog. You did. Something shifted in my mind. A memory I didn't want, a memory I didn't ask for, a memory the entity forced to the surface. Marissa, standing in the rain, staring at the shelter. Me, standing inside it, watching her. Not calling out, not warning her, just watching. Daniel, shaking, terrified, clutching his wrist. Me, standing across the street, not helping, not speaking, just watching. Evan, leaning over the bridge railing. Me, in the shadows beneath the overpass, not saving him, not trying, just watching. My breath hitched. No, I whispered. That's not real. That's not what happened. The voice laughed, a soft, delighted sound. You don't remember because I didn't want you to. But you were always there. You've always been mine. The streetlights dimmed, the air thickened, and from the far end of the road, a glow appeared, red, pulsing, alive. The bus. It slid toward the corner, wheels flexing, windows pulsing, destination sign flickering through symbols that made my vision blur. The voice whispered, "Come home. You've waited long enough." I stepped back. The bus stopped. The doors opened. The smell hit me. Incense, stone, blood. The shadows spilled down the steps, reaching for me. And for the first time, I felt something new. Not fear. Recognition. Like a memory of a place I'd been before. Like a homecoming. The voice purred. You see it now. You feel it. You know what you are. The shadows brushed my shoes, cold, hungry, eager. I closed my eyes, and the voice whispered one final thing. Soft, intimate, triumphant. You're not the narrator. You're the invitation. I didn't sleep after the bus spoke to me. I didn't even try. I sat in my apartment with every light on, staring at the door, waiting for a knock that never came. Waiting for the shadows under the furniture to move. Waiting for the hum in the walls to grow louder. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the memory. The one the entity forced into my mind. Me standing at the bus stop while Marissa approached. Me watching Daniel from across the street. Me under the bridge when Evan leaned over the railing. I told myself it was a lie, a trick, a hallucination. But the more I tried to push the memory away, the more it pushed back. By dawn, I wasn't sure what was real anymore. When the sun finally rose, I checked my phone. I expected to see the time. Instead, I saw something else. A gap. A missing block of hours between midnight and 3 a.m. No calls, no messages, no location data, no steps recorded. Just a blank space where my life should have been. I checked my shoes. The soles were wet. Not from rain, from something thicker, something darker, something that smelled faintly of cold stone and old metal. My heart hammered. I didn't remember leaving my apartment, but my shoes said I had. I stepped into the hallway, needing air, needing space, needing anything that wasn't the four walls closing in around me. That's when I saw him, a man standing at the far end of the corridor, tall, still, facing me. His clothes were soaked, his hair hung in wet strands, his skin was pale, almost gray. I opened my mouth to speak. He raised a hand, not to wave, to point, directly at me. His finger trembled, his lips moved. No sound came out. Then in a voice that wasn't his, a voice layered, distorted, echoing, he whispered, "You left the door open." I blinked. He was gone, just gone. No footsteps, no fading sound, no movement, just empty hallway, and a cold draft brushing past me as if something had walked by. I turned back toward my apartment. My door was open, not wide, just a crack, just enough for someone, or something, to slip through. I stepped inside slowly. The lights were still on. Everything looked the same, but the air felt wrong, heavy, occupied, like someone had been standing in the room moments before I entered. I checked the floor, wet footprints, leading from the door to the center of the room, and stopping, not turning, not leaving, just stopping, as if whoever made them had simply vanished, or sunk, or been pulled downward. My breath caught. I followed the footprints. At the end of the trail, something waited for me. A piece of paper, folded once, placed neatly on the floor. I picked it up with shaking hands. Inside, written in jagged, uneven strokes, "You walked with us, you just don't remember." My vision blurred. My pulse roared in my ears. I dropped the paper, and that's when I heard it. Not outside, not in the hallway, inside my apartment. Behind me, slow, wet, deliberate. Footsteps that matched the prints on the floor, footsteps that weren't mine. I turned. No one was there, but the footsteps continued, circling me, invisible, heavy, soaking the carpet with each step. I backed against the wall, heart pounding, breath shaking. The footsteps stopped, right in front of me, and a voice, soft, intimate, familiar, whispered, "You're remembering. Good." Something inside me shifted, a memory. A real one, not forced, not planted. A night months ago. A bus stop, a red glow, a voice calling my name, a shadow touching my ankle, a coldness spreading through my veins, a whisper, "You'll help me find them." My knees buckled. I slid down the wall, shaking. The voice in the room purred, "You were the first. You were the door. You were mine long before the others." The lights flickered. The air thickened. And for the first time, I understood something I had been refusing to see. I wasn't just connected to the entity. I wasn't just chosen. I was claimed. The lights went out. Total darkness. In that darkness, something leaned close, breath cold against my ear. And it whispered, "You're not telling their stories. You're telling mine." The lights snapped back on. The room was empty. The footprints were gone, but the paper remained. And now, beneath the original message, a new line had appeared. "Tonight, 12, your turn." I left my apartment before midnight, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't stay inside. The air felt wrong. The walls felt thin. The shadows felt crowded. Every time I blinked, I saw movement in the corners of my vision. Shapes that didn't belong to the geometry of my home. Shapes that leaned too far forward. Shapes that waited for me to close my eyes again. So I walked down the stairwell, through the lobby, out into the cold night air. The city felt empty, not quiet. Empty. Like every sound was being swallowed before it reached my ears, like the world was holding its breath, like something enormous was listening. I walked past the corner store, closed, lights off, no clerk inside. I walked past the diner, chairs stacked, windows dark, no cook, no waitress, no late-night regulars. I walked past the busier streets, no cars, no pedestrians, no dogs barking from balconies, no music leaking from apartment windows. Just silence. Thick, heavy, absolute. It felt like the city had been evacuated, or erased, or paused, just for me. When I reached Ashwood and Briar, the streetlight above the bus stop flickered once, then again. Then it went out completely. The darkness that followed wasn't normal darkness. It felt alive, like something was standing just outside the circle of my vision, waiting for me to step closer. The bus stop was there. Of course it was. Glass fogged, bench dripping, schedule glowing faintly. But something was different. The shelter wasn't empty. Someone was sitting on the bench. At first I thought it was a man. Tall. Still. Head bowed. But the longer I looked, the less human he became. His posture was wrong. Too rigid, too straight, like his spine had been replaced with a metal rod. His hands rested on his knees, fingers long and motionless. His clothes were soaked, dripping steadily onto the concrete. I stepped closer. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't acknowledge me. But the fog on the glass behind him shifted. Words formed slowly, as if written by a trembling hand. "You know him." My stomach twisted. I stepped closer. The figure lifted his head, and I saw his face. Daniel, or what was left of him. Skin pale, eyes hollow, veins dark beneath the surface. The same stain that had spread across his wrist now crawled up his neck, branching like black lightning. His mouth opened. No sound came out. But the fog behind him wrote for him. "You left me." I staggered back. "No," I whispered. "I didn't." The fog smeared violently. New words appeared. "You watched." My breath caught. The figure stood, slowly, mechanically, like a puppet being lifted by invisible strings. He stepped toward me. His feet made no sound. His shadow stretched too far behind him, bending around the edges of the shelter like it was trying to escape his body. He raised a hand, not to touch me, to point at the street behind me. I turned. The red glow was already there, closer than it should have been, too close. The bus slid into view, wheels flexing, windows pulsing, destination sign flickering through symbols that made my vision blur. The doors opened. The smell hit me. Incense, stone, blood. The voice whispered, "You brought him back. Bring the others. Bring yourself." I shook my head. "No, I'm not yours." The voice laughed, soft, delighted. "You were mine the moment you stepped on the first stair. You just don't remember." The shadows spilled from the bus, thin, slick, alive. They reached for me, and Daniel, or the thing wearing him, stepped aside, giving them room. The shadows touched my shoes, cold, hungry, eager, and something inside me cracked. A memory. A real one, not forced, not planted. A night long before Marissa, long before Daniel, long before Evan. A night when I stood at the bus stop alone. A night when the bus arrived for me. A night when I stepped inside. A night when the entity whispered, "You'll help me find them." My knees buckled. The shadows wrapped around my ankles. The voice purred. You're not the victim, you're not the witness, you're the reason they come here. You're the one who opens the door. The shadows tightened. The bus hummed. The figure that used to be Daniel watched silently, and the voice whispered one final truth. You're not telling a story, you're confessing. I didn't walk to the bus stop that night. I didn't choose to. My body moved on its own, like a puppet following invisible strings. Every step felt familiar, rehearsed, like I'd walked this path 1,000 times before. Maybe I had. The city was still empty, the air still heavy, the silence still absolute. But something was different. The world felt thinner, like a sheet of paper stretched too tight, ready to tear. And beneath that paper, something enormous shifted, waiting, breathing, smiling. When I reached the intersection, the bus stop wasn't flickering. It wasn't appearing. It wasn't waiting. It was alive. The glass pulsed faintly, like lungs expanding and contracting. The metal frame vibrated with a low hum that crawled through my bones. The bench dripped with condensation that pooled on the concrete in shapes that looked disturbingly like footprints. The schedule panel glowed brighter than usual. Too bright, painfully bright. I stepped closer, and I saw my name. Not once, not twice, but filling the entire panel. 12 more, you 12 of Laubadiu, you 12 more, you. Each line pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The shelter fogged violently, as if something pressed its entire weight against the inside. A shape formed, not a face, a silhouette, tall, elongated, spine arched like a hooked blade, limbs too long, head too narrow. The same shape I'd seen in the bus, the same shape that had whispered to me, the same shape that had followed me home. It leaned closer, the fog bulged outward, and words carved themselves into the condensation. Welcome back. My breath caught. I never left, I whispered. The glass cracked. A thin fracture raced across the panel. New words appeared. You did, but you always return. The hum in the air deepened. The ground vibrated, and the voice, the one that had whispered to Marissa, Daniel, Evan, rose inside my skull, not like a thought, like a memory. You were the first. You were the door. You were the one who opened the way. My knees weakened. No, I whispered. I didn't. The voice cut me off. You did. You called us. You begged us. You wanted us. Images flashed behind my eyes. A younger version of myself, standing at the bus stop, alone, crying, desperate, broken. A whisper, take me away. A shadow touching my ankle. A coldness spreading through my veins. A voice answering, gladly. My breath hitched. I staggered back. The truth hit me like a blow. I hadn't been chosen. I had invited it. The red glow appeared instantly. No approach, no sound, no build-up. Just there. As if it had always been there. As if it had been waiting just outside reality for the right moment to slip through. The bus slid to the curb. The doors opened. The smell hit me. Incense, stone, blood. The shadows spilled down the steps, thin, slick, alive. They reached for me, and this time I didn't step back. The voice purred. You see it now. You remember. You belong to me. You always have. The shadows wrapped around my ankles, cold, hungry, eager. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't run, because the truth was finally clear. I wasn't the narrator of this story. I wasn't the witness. I wasn't the victim. I was the first offering, the first passenger, the first soul the entity ever claimed. And everything since, every disappearance, every whisper, every victim, had been drawn to the bus because of me. Because I had opened the door, because I had called it, because I had wanted it. The voice whispered, "Come home." And I stepped forward. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the world outside vanished. Not faded, not dimmed, vanished. The street, the shelter, the city, the night, all gone. The doors closed behind me with a wet, organic thud, like muscle sealing shut. The air inside the bus was thick, humid, and warm, carrying the faint scent of old stone and extinguished candles. I didn't see seats. I saw ribs, curved, pale structures lining the aisle, slick with condensation, pulsing faintly with each slow, deliberate breath the vessel took. The floor wasn't metal. It was something softer, something that gave slightly under my weight, like walking on tightly stretched skin. The lights overhead flickered, not bulbs, eyes, dozens of them, blinking in slow, asynchronous patterns, watching me from above. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I walked deeper, because the truth was already inside me. Every step I took echoed strangely, as if the sound wasn't bouncing off walls but being swallowed by something hungry. The shadows between the ribs shifted, stretching toward me, recoiling, then stretching again, like hands reaching from behind a curtain. The hum grew louder, not from the bus, from me, from somewhere deep in my chest, vibrating through my bones, syncing with the heartbeat of the vessel. A voice rose inside my skull, not the whisper I'd heard before, something older, something deeper. "You remember the way?" I did. My feet moved without hesitation, following a path I didn't consciously know but felt in my marrow. Left, right, down the aisle, toward the front, toward the driver's seat, toward the entity. It wasn't sitting. It was perched, its limbs folded in impossible angles, its spine arched like a hooked blade, its head tilted slightly, as if listening to something only it could hear. When it turned toward me, the air thickened. Its face wasn't a face. It was a suggestion of one, long, narrow, hollow, with deep sockets where eyes should be. The darkness inside those sockets wasn't empty. It was watching. It leaned closer. The shadows around it tightened, coiling like serpents preparing to strike. And then it spoke. Not aloud, inside me. "Welcome home." My breath caught. My pulse stuttered. But I didn't step back, because I remembered. A flash. A memory. Me, younger, standing in this same aisle, terrified, crying, begging. "Take me away." The entity leaning close and whispering, "I will. But you must bring others. You must open the door." Another flash. Me stepping off the bus. Me walking into the city. Me forgetting everything. Me becoming the lure, the narrator, the witness, the invitation. The entity reached out, not with a hand, with a shadow. It touched my chest, cold, sharp, intimate. And the hum inside me synced perfectly with the hum of the vessel. The voice purred. "You were the first soul I tasted. You were the sweetest. You were the one who begged, and you will beg again." My knees buckled. The shadows wrapped around my arms, my legs, my throat. Not choking, not restraining, just holding me in place like a lover's embrace. The entity leaned close enough that I felt its breath, cold, ancient, wrong, brush against my skin. "Tell me a story," it whispered. "Tell me how you brought them to me." I opened my mouth, and the words came out on their own. "I didn't bring them." The entity tilted its head. The shadows tightened. I continued. "You did." A pause. A long, heavy silence. Then the entity smiled, not with lips, with the darkness inside its sockets widening, stretching, blooming like a flower made of void. "Good," it whispered. "You're remembering." The shadows pulled me closer. The vessel shuddered, and the entity whispered one final thing. Soft, delighted, triumphant. "Now tell me the rest." The shadows pulled me deeper into the bus, not dragging, guiding. Like hands on my shoulders, steering me toward a place I had already been, a place I had forgotten, a place I had once begged to return to. The aisle stretched ahead of me, ribs arching overhead like the inside of a colossal beast. The floor pulsed faintly beneath my feet, warm and alive, vibrating with the slow, steady rhythm of a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The entity watched me, not with eyes, with awareness. A pressure in the air, a weight in my skull, a presence that filled every inch of the vessel. "You remember," it whispered. I did. And that was the worst part. The shadows tightened around my arms, not painfully, possessively, like a lover reclaiming something that had wandered too far. A memory rose from the depths of my mind, uncoiling like smoke. Me, years ago. Younger. Lonely. Broken in ways I didn't understand. Standing at the bus stop, crying, begging. "Take me away." The bus arriving, the doors opening, the shadows reaching. The entity whispering, "I will, but you must help me find others." I had agreed. I had stepped inside willingly. I had become the first passenger, the first offering, the first soul the entity ever claimed. And when it was done with me, it didn't discard me. It sent me back. Changed, hollowed, marked. A beacon, a lure, a door. The entity leaned closer, its silhouette bending in ways that defied anatomy. Its presence pressed against my mind like cold fingers tracing the inside of my skull. "You brought them to me," it purred. "Marissa, Daniel, Evan. You called them. You opened the way." I shook my head. "No, I didn't want..." The shadows tightened, not hurting, correcting. "You did," the entity whispered. "You wanted someone to share your fear. You wanted someone to understand. You wanted someone to follow you." My breath caught, because it was true. Somewhere deep inside me, beneath the fear, beneath the denial, there had always been a part of me that wanted to be seen, to be understood, to not be alone in the darkness. The entity knew that. It had always known. The bus shuddered. The ribs along the walls flexed. The eyes overhead blinked in slow, rippling waves. The entity spread its limbs, unfolding like a shadow peeling itself from the world. "This vessel is not a prison," it whispered. "It is a mouth, a path, a promise." The shadows around my legs pulsed. The hum inside my chest synced perfectly with the hum of the bus. I wasn't just inside the vessel, I was part of it. I always had been. The entity leaned close enough that I felt its breath. Cold, ancient, wrong. Brush against my skin. "You can stay," it whispered. "You can return to where you belong. You can be the first, again." The shadows tightened around my throat, not choking, holding, waiting. "Or," the entity continued, "you can go back. You can walk the streets. You can tell your stories. You can bring me more." My pulse hammered. My breath shook. Because I understood the choice. Stay and be consumed. Leave and become the lure again. The entity tilted its head. "Choose." The shadows pulsed. The vessel hummed. The air thickened. And I realized something that froze me to my core. There was no choice. There never had been. Because the moment I stepped onto the first stair all those years ago, I had already chosen. The shadows held me in place, not painfully, Not violently, just firmly, like a parent holding a child still long enough to make them listen. The entity leaned closer, its silhouette bending in ways that made my stomach twist. Its presence filled the vessel, pressing against my mind like cold fingers tracing the inside of my skull. "You chose this," it whispered. The words weren't accusation, they were memory, and the memory rose again. Clearer this time. Me, younger, standing at the bus stop, alone, crying, begging. "Take me away." The entity's shadow touching my ankle, the cold spreading through my veins. The whisper, "Gladly, but you must help me find others." I had agreed. I had stepped inside willingly. I had become the first passenger, the first offering, the first soul the entity ever claimed. And when it was done with me, it didn't consume me. It sent me back. Changed, hollowed, marked, a lure, a beacon, a door. The vessel shuddered. The ribs along the walls flexed. The eyes overhead blinked in slow, rippling waves. The floor pulsed beneath my feet like a living thing. The entity spread its limbs, unfolding like a shadow peeling itself from the world. "I do not feed on flesh," it whispered. "I feed on fear, on longing, on the moment a soul breaks." The shadows around my throat tightened, not choking, just reminding me they were there. "You broke beautifully." My breath shook. The entity leaned closer, "And you brought me others who broke just as sweetly. Marissa, Daniel, Evan." Their faces flashed behind my eyes. Their screams echoed in my skull. The entity purred. "You were my first. You were my favorite. You were the one who begged." I closed my eyes, and the truth hit me like a blow. I hadn't been cursed. I had been chosen, because I had asked for it. The shadows loosened. The entity stepped back, or seemed to. Its shape blurred, stretching and contracting like smoke caught in a draft. "You can stay," it whispered. "You can return to the place you first begged to go. You can be the first again." The vessel hummed, the ribs flexed, the eyes blinked, the shadows pulsed. "Or," the entity continued, "you can walk the streets again. You can tell your stories. You can bring me more." My pulse hammered. My breath shook, because I understood the choice. Stay and be consumed. Leave and become the lure again. The entity tilted its head. "Choose." But I already knew the truth. There was no choice. There never had been. Because the moment I stepped onto the first stair all those years ago, I had already chosen. The shadows didn't drag me deeper into the vessel. They guided me, like hands on my shoulders, like a parent leading a child, like a shepherd guiding something that had always belonged in the flock. The aisle stretched ahead of me, ribs arching overhead like the inside of a colossal beast. The floor pulsed beneath my feet, warm and alive, vibrating with the heartbeat of something ancient. The entity watched, not with eyes, with presence, a pressure in the air, a weight in my skull, a coldness in my bones. "You remember," it whispered. And I did. The memory rose again, clearer, sharper, undeniable. Me, younger, standing at the bus stop, alone, crying, begging. "Take me away." The bus arriving, the doors opening, the shadows reaching, the entity whispering, "Gladly." I had stepped inside willingly. I had become the first passenger, the first offering, the first soul the entity ever claimed. But that wasn't the end of the memory. There was more. Something I had forgotten, something the entity had hidden, something it was ready to show me now. The shadows tightened around my arms, not painfully, possessively. The entity leaned closer, its silhouette bending in ways that made my stomach twist. "You didn't just beg to be taken," it whispered. "You begged to stay." The memory snapped into focus. Me, inside the bus, terrified, shaking, crying, but not begging to leave, begging to remain. "Don't send me back," I had whispered. "Don't make me go home." The entity had leaned close. Its voice had been soft, almost gentle. "I won't," it had said. "Not forever." The shadows had wrapped around me, cold, comforting, claiming, and then a flash of light. A tearing sensation, a scream. Mine. A whisper. "You will return when I call." And I'd been thrown back into the world, not freed, released, like bait, like a lure, like a door. The vessel shuddered, the ribs flexed, the eyes blinked, the shadows pulsed. The entity unfolded itself, stretching its limbs like a shadow peeling away from the world. "I do not hunt," it whispered. "I call." The shadows tightened around my throat, not choking, holding. "And you answer." My breath shook. The entity leaned closer. "You are not my prisoner. You are my echo." The hum inside my chest synced perfectly with the hum of the vessel. I wasn't just connected to the entity, I was part of it. I always had been. The entity raised one long, impossible limb and touched my forehead with a shadow that felt like ice and fire at the same time. The world went silent. The vessel stopped breathing. The shadows froze, and the entity whispered, "You never left." My vision blurred. The aisle stretched, the ribs pulsed, the eyes blinked, and I saw it. My reflection, not in a window, in the vessel itself, in the ribs, in the shadows, in the pulsing floor. My face, my eyes, my shape, twisted, stretched, changed. I wasn't the narrator. I wasn't the witness. I wasn't the victim. I was the first passenger. And I had never truly stepped off the bus. The entity didn't move. It didn't need to. The vessel moved for it. The ribs along the walls flexed, tightening like a throat preparing to swallow. The eyes overhead blinked in slow, rippling waves, watching me with a hunger that felt almost affectionate. The shadows around my legs pulsed. The hum inside my chest synced perfectly with the hum of the bus. I wasn't standing inside the vessel. I was standing inside a memory, my memory. The first night, the first step, the first promise. "You never left," the entity whispered, and I finally understood. I hadn't been walking the streets for years. I hadn't been living a life. I hadn't been telling stories. I had been dreaming. A long, slow dream the entity allowed me to have. A dream of being human, of being separate, of being free. But I had never stepped off the bus. Not really, not truly. I had been inside it the whole time. The vessel shuddered, the aisles stretched, the ribs pulsed, the eyes blinked. And the world outside, the city, the streets, the victims, flickered like a dying light bulb. A projection, a memory, a story the entity let me tell myself, a story I had whispered to others, a story that had drawn them in. The entity leaned closer. "You were my first," it whispered, "and you will be my last." The shadows tightened around my throat, not choking, claiming. "You brought me enough," it purred. "Now you return to where you belong." My breath shook. My vision blurred. The hum inside me grew louder, vibrating through my bones, syncing perfectly with the heartbeat of the vessel. I wasn't afraid, not anymore, because the truth was finally clear. I had never been the narrator. I had never been the witness. I had never been the victim. I was the first passenger, and now I was coming home. The entity raised one long, impossible limb and touched my forehead with a shadow that felt like ice and fire at the same time. The world went silent. The vessel stopped breathing. The shadows froze, and the entity whispered, "Tell them." My breath caught. "Tell who?" I whispered. The entity smiled, not with lips, with darkness. "The ones listening?" The vessel shuddered. The shadows surged. The world collapsed inward. And the last thing I heard before everything went black was the entity's voice. Soft, delighted, triumphant. Now they know the way. Hey, if you liked this video and want more content, please do like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you want to share some of your personal scary stories, email us using the email in the description. Haunt you later.